Your resume is the first thing that anybody is going to interact with whenever you apply for a role. And it is very important that you write that very well and you show whoever is reading your resume, whether a recruiter or an application tracking system, that you are the right fit for the role. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the resume that got me interviews in a couple of companies, including Google, Facebook, Amazon, Asana, Yelp, and a couple of others, and got me offers in 3 of those companies. So let's get into it. Before I go over and show you the resume, I think it's important that we talk about what happens to your resume when you apply for a role, because I don't think a lot of people know what happens when you apply for a role. What steps does your resume go through and what happens after you submit it? For most jobs, when you apply for a role, your resume is probably going to be read by an application tracking system, or for the cool guys, an ATS. What an ATS does is that it takes your resume and the resume of other people that apply for the same job, and then it compares it with some keywords that is in the job requirements. It tries to see if you'll be a good fit for that particular role. The ATS passes all the resumes and ranks the resume in order of how it thinks they are the best fit for a role. Then in most cases, after the ATS is done passing the resume, it then sends a list of the top ranked resume to an human recruiter, who then goes through that and then selects the top candidate and then sends them an email, right? So for most people, you probably apply for a role and then in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you see that, oh, you're already rejected, and you're like, nobody read this. That's because nobody read that, right? What happens is that an ATS reads through your resume and then immediately it sees that you don't meet the minimum requirements that was specified for it. It automatically sends a rejection email. But for those that meet the minimum requirements, the resume gets sent to a recruiter, and then the recruiter reads through and picks the top candidate, then sends probably an invitation to interview or a rejection mail, depending on your particular instances. So that's what happens to your resume after you apply for a role. And this is the point that everybody has been waiting for, where we go over the resume that got me those interviews. But before we go over that, I would like to say that this resume is like a little bit old, because I used this in 2021, and there are a lot of other things that I've discovered that I think can make your application look better, or can make your resume look better. And I'll be sharing those tips after we go over the resume. And it is also very important that this resume was for a new grad position, and depending on the kind of position you're applying for, it's possible that you need to make some adjustments and make some arrangements, which I would also talk about while I'm going over the resume. And when we are done going over the resume, I'll give some final tips. So let's get into it. We have this resume. So this is an example of the resume. I'm blocking out the name of the company. I don't know. But yeah, the first thing obviously is that you want to have your name. You can put your first name and your last name. You don't need to put your middle name or anything. Just put your first name and your last name. Then the next thing you want to make sure you do is that you have your email, a link to your GitHub, and a link to your LinkedIn. What I've discovered in most resumes, which I would like to touch on, is that you want to make sure that your links are hyperlinked, meaning that when they click on it, it goes to the link. So if you click on this GitHub, it goes to my GitHub profile. If you click on the LinkedIn, it goes to my LinkedIn profile. That's very important, because you don't want your recruiter, whoever is going through this, to have to be typing out your email, right? Then the next thing, which is for a new grad position, which is advisable, is that you put your education first, at least in most cases. You want to put your education first. Okay, if you're applying for a new grad position, you want to put the course you studied and the years that you went to school for. Another very important thing that you want to add, especially if you're applying for a new grad, is that you want to add a list of the relevant coursework that you took in school, right? So in school, I took some courses on data structures and algorithm, introduction to digital system, computer programming, because you want to show that you took some courses in the school that are applicable to the job that you're applying for. And this is where keywords come into when you're applying, with the application tracking system is going to go through. So you want to check the job opening that you're applying for and see some keywords that are there. So if you're applying for a new grad position, they'll probably put things like, oh, you must have studied this thing in school. And if you studied those things in school, because you don't want to lie, if you study those things in school, then you want to add some of those courses on that relevant coursework. If you also participated in some student competitions or some hackathons, you might want to put some of those things. I was a part of the developer student community. I was also a Microsoft Talent student ambassador, and also I participated in the Google Ashco 2020 and 2019, right? And this was the point that I got. Then the next thing is your experience, right? So for a new grad, or whether you're an experienced person, if you have any work experience, you want to list them. Okay, the name of the company, which I'm blocking out, whether it was remote or where it was located. Then you want to write the job title and when you worked at that position, right? And after that, you want to have a list of your responsibilities. Like I said, this is pretty old, but usually you don't want to add things like contract position. And then when you're writing this, I don't want to have to go over this again. You want to focus on metrics. Okay, so what did you do? So usually the way it's put is that what you did, how you achieved it, and what the result was. So instead of writing design and implementation of this, you want to say design this social feature using this tool by focusing on this, which led to a customer acquisition of more than 100%. And usually what I recommend, which I really do, is that I have a list of the technologies I used in that job under each job experience. I think that goes a long way for your application tracking system. So you might want to focus on that. So you have a list of the jobs, internships, contracts positions, freelance positions, that you want to write them here. Then the next thing is you want to write your skills. So usually I like to break my skills down into technologies. So basically technologies are frameworks and languages that I've worked with. So you write JavaScript, Python, C++. Usually I probably want to add React here, which I don't know why it was not here. The other thing that I have is operating system and tools. So the operating systems that you've worked with and some tools that you've worked with. So things like Git, GitHub, GitLab, Docker, AWS, GCP, Heroku, some deployment platforms and all. And you probably also want to add soft skills, okay, which is like, just a good thing to add, all right? And then next thing is you want to add a project. You want to add a project session. And this is more in tune for people that don't have a lot of work experience. So if you don't have a lot of work experience, what I really advise is that you make your project more robust than this, right? So let's say you are a student and you've not had any internship or you've not had any work experience. Instead of having your experience be like this, what you want to do is you want to put your project where the experience is, and then you want to list a couple of things that you did in that project. So instead of having a summary of this, then you want to have a list of the way you itemized what you did in a particular job opening, right? What you would have listed if you had worked somewhere. You want to have the same thing under the project, okay? The technologies you used, what you did, what you achieved, if you worked in a team, all right, things like that. Then the next thing is, if you're part of any community of any organization, you want to add a leadership or membership section, which I really have here. So I have the Microsoft Imagine Cup, all the things some mentorship things that I did. Before I leave here, the general advice is that if you don't have more than 5 years of work experience, you don't want to make your resume more than one page. It depends, but that's the general advice I give to people. If you don't have more than 5 years of experience, you don't want to make your resume more than one page. Just take note of that. I know this resume is not probably the best that you have seen, but I would say that there are a couple of things you can pick from there, and I would like to give some tips about when writing your resume. Like I already said, if you don't have more than 5 years of experience, you don't want to make your resume more than one page. Also, you want to focus on metrics, on what you achieved. The next thing that I probably want to say is that you want to make sure that your resume is a single colon. And what I mean by that is that you've probably seen some resumes that have multiple colons, right? So you have some things, there's some things. And usually people do that to like save space and keep their resume on one page. But what I would really say is that when your resume is in two columns, it's very hard for an application tracking system to go over it, because usually the way an ATS does, there are some modern application tracking system that makes life easy, but the way an application tracking system work in most cases is that it reads from left to right, top to bottom, right, and then it tries to parses your resume. And if your resume is two colons, then it's probably going to be hard for an application tracking system to read through your resume. And then the next thing that I want to say is that if you see that your resume is extending more than one page, one trick I really use is that I increase the paper size. Okay, so you can, if you are using Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you can increase the paper size and also reduce the margins so that your so that the text on your resume takes on more space. Okay, I hope you really learned something from that video. If you learned something, write in the comment section. If you have any question, make sure to write in the comment section. And if you stayed to the end of this video, I have a quick bonus for you. Check the description, you'll find a template for this resume that I just showed that you can adjust to suit your particular circumstance. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Bye.